So, as I said before, the protests are all over the world, not just in the United States. Tens, millions, all over the world. It's been an astonishing sight. It is pretty heady to me. Profound, actually. I don't necessarily know entirely how to place it, even though, for whatever reason, it feels euphoric. I think it feels euphoric because when I look at the world, I look at the world and say, it doesn't have a purpose. It doesn't have a point. None of it matters, ultimately, at least not from a cosmic point of view. There's no God, there's no king, there's just nothing. There's no entity that is telling you that your world needs to be anything. And yet, we've organized ourselves and we've accepted a certain order where we allow a large amount of resources to be expropriated to the top, and everyone else have to fight for whatever else is left of the spoils. And then we're shocked that we have people who are dying of opioid abuse or dying of some kind of disease of despair, or who are depressed, or who are struggling pillar to post, that are beaten down just because of the way the system is organized and the way that these guys have to fight just for the smallest crumbs. You have a part of your society that is just dirt poor, barely making ends meet. And people are shocked that those people are, perturbed in some way. Why are you shocked? I'm shocked that it hadn't got to the point where people ask, is this fair? Is this equitable? Is this something that we should allow in our society? Do we want that guy to be a trillionaire? Is it fair that that guy is a billionaire and you have people who don't have health care? Those questions need to be asked because the fact of the matter is the money is not real. The human beings are. And how you organize your society is an act of policy. That is an act of intentional will. Whether you involve yourself in it or not is a choice. But it is intentional will of those with the means that would prefer to keep the system the way it is. I love the fact that these people say the political system is not giving us what we want. This political system is an imaginary thing. It's not real. You guys can organize it around it. We're going to the streets. And the political system either has to deal with that through force or has to deal with that by acquiescing to the demands of the public. If that public continues to stay in the streets, that political system has to do something about it. Yes, it will use the cops to beat those people, but those people still need to go out and take that beating. That ounce of blood, that ounce of sweat is the thing that basically, ultimately, gets the political system to acquiesce. This is the way it works. It's not a beautiful process. Chaos is the thing that forces some level of change. It's always been that way. Unfortunately, it takes a huge number of people to get modest, at times, change. What I'm hoping with all of these people around the world, there's an energetic feeling of something's wrong. Otherwise, those people aren't out there. It's a hot fucking day. It's 90-degree weather. And millions of people are outside marching. I did not want to get out the house. I like my house. I like my basement. It's awesome. I dragged my ass out to Washington, D.C. today and marched and chanted with the other people who were there. It's laborious, and yet people are doing it. You must engage that and ask yourself, why? Do you honestly believe that all of these people in all of these other countries are galvanized entirely, meaning identifying entirely with the African American that was killed? Or is it something within the context of their system that they get, even if they don't necessarily get that, but they recognize something's wrong? I would point to you that goes down to the point of, why are the cops there? And is it true that the cops are there to maintain order? Is order or disorder inherent in your system, and if so, why? And is it possible that that disorder has to do with the inequities in your system? The rich needs to ensure that the poor doesn't create an army to go in, take the cash from the rich. Maybe you need to do something about the communities that are desperate and fucking poor. Maybe you need to do something about the people who don't have health care, about the people who have tens of thousands of dollars on their backs for the temerity to get an education. I'm saying that yes, the cop thing is an issue. You have all of these people on the streets. Make your demands. What do you want? And in the context of those demands, make those demands fucking expansive. How many people do you have on the streets, and do you really want to acquiesce and leave after all of this for some minor change? especially if that minor change doesn't necessarily stop the fact that the cop was going to be there to do that particular crime. It goes beyond the cop. It goes beyond that cop being racist. That cop could have been black and did the same thing. It goes beyond the cops. My only point is when you make your demands, make those demands in expansive terms. Coming in July, there are going to be a series of evictions. And when those series of evictions hit, you're going to have a lot of desperate, angry people that are going to be added to this protest. Now, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just this feeling that something's different with this. And this kind of odd, weird, strange way where the entire world was galvanized by this is somewhat shocking and profound. And I don't entirely know what it means yet. I haven't heard a demand. But like I said, this is not just in the United States. It's all over the world. I'm going to show you what took place in the UK. Edward Colston, slave trader, yanked down. Not just yanked down, dragged, thrown into the river. Now, this is, for me, weird. And I'll explain what I mean. Welcome to Late Night Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content. PayPal, Patreon. The Brits. Black Lives Matter in the UK. Also, tens and tens of thousands of people. Massive protests in London. I showed you the videos from yesterday where all of those people were filling into Westminster. Massive crowds. Not just massive crowds, though. Those crowds got active. Now, for me, I lived in Richmond, Virginia, born and raised. 6:05 a.m., August 31st, 1977. Yes, I'm ancient. Now, the thing is, we have Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia, and we have one person after the next going all the way up. Confederates, people who basically tried to destroy terrorists to take down the United States government. And those people are there. And I pass those people nearly every day. Never once thought one thing or the other of that person and of that statue. And when people started making the point of saying those statues need to be pulled down, and you had a movement of people saying those statues need to be pulled down, especially African Americans who made the point these are Confederates, these people were terrorists, they're trying to take down the government of the United States, and you built statues honoring these terrorists. Just so happened also, those terrorists wanted to keep me a fucking slave. Take that shit down. Now, I was of the mind of saying, well, look, those things are a part of our history, and as being a part of our history, whether you take it down or not, the thing is a part of our history. Now, Richmond, you can look at that as a testament of honor, or you can look at that as a testament of shame. And I think the point is, if you're going to look at it as a testament of shame, then why is it there? And for me, this was somewhat of a growing experience because my thought was, maybe they're right. I don't have the strong thing of that thing needs to be ripped down because I think your issue is not that statue. Your issue is you have economic issues that need to be dealt with. Your time should be spent on the economic issues. By the same token, I still get the argument of that guy was a slave trader and this thing was built as a monument for that particular person. Fuck, you call it Monument Avenue. You can't look at it as a thing of shame if you're calling it Monument Avenue. Take that shit down. I'm being brought over to the position. I think my thing is, I don't have a strong desire one way or the other about it, but I'm starting to lean inside of maybe you have a point. If you're going to build monuments to people, maybe those monuments should be actual monuments. And maybe at some point your society needs to, revisit what it may want to honor. That's not necessarily a bad thing if your society comes to the conclusion, maybe our priorities were fucked up when we built the statue. Maybe the statue needs to change. The thing is, some people are going to be against that just by definition, not for any racist reasons, but because they feel that's a monument, that's part of our particular history, that's part of our society. We don't need to pull that monument down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the fight over it, though, is overwrought. only in the sense that your issue is not that monument. Focus on your issues. But if they take the monument down, I have no feelings. If it's going to be a monument, make it a monument, right? Britain didn't wait for that. Bristol, UK. This guy is a slave trader. And Britain had no fucks to give about giving this slave trader his due. So this is Edward Colston, the gentleman who's standing up there, so precariously tilted. Edward Colston was a 17th century slave trader. And just like in the United States, where we have Confederates, people who were vicious slave traders or Indian killers or Native American killers, like Andrew Jackson, we even put these people on our money. There he stands. A monument to a slave trader. They're not taking any shit off this anymore, and they're not waiting for the city to come to the conclusion to remove him. The public has dispensed justice. I want you to notice something else. They're white. They're white. Either these white people are identified with George Floyd, or there is something else in your society that just so happens to be in all of those other societies that is incentivizing and pushing these people to act this way. Is it possible that the austerity, is it possible that the capitalistic system and this kind of neoliberal thing of markets over people, the way that the money is distributed inequitably, is it possible that these people are being galvanized by this? And they're looking at the broader society and saying something is wrong and we need to change this. And this righteous indignation furls up and gets the public to go beyond the political space. And that freaks the political space out, because the political space wants to be the sovereign in the sense of dispensing power. And when the public goes out there and asserts the fact that there are 100,000 of you, there are 300 million of us, are you going to murder all of us? And if you're not, you need to change. I am fanatic about this. You have no idea how much this energizes me. This is more video. And believe it or not, that looked like when Saddam Hussein statues fell. It looked the same way. You had people jumping on it and hitting it with their shoes and everything else. The only difference is these people are white. Here are more attacking slave trader. Now, were they right or wrong? Oh, I love these questions. Were they right or wrong? I love that question. I love that question. They chucked him into the river. This is what we think of you. This is what we think. This is our judgment. Looking back over the arc of time and looking at what you did in the course of your life, this is our righteous judgment that you were wrong by our own value system. And what you did to all of those people. Yes, you did good things for Bristol, but you did it on the backs of fucking slaves. And we don't accept that anymore as a society. And we don't want your monument. And those people grabbed it, pulled it down, and chucked it out. Where was the government? They didn't use their godlike abilities to stop these people from pulling that monument down and chucking it. And what is the government going to do? Are you going to arrest all of those people? How many people were there? What, thousands? You're going to put thousands of people into prison, or are you just going to make an example out of one or two? How do you make an example out of one or two when thousands were there in the commission of that quote-unquote crime? Were they right or wrong to do so? Now, the government, and based on government's law, the government says that's horrendous. How dare you deface our property in this way? Home Secretary Priti Patel said the toppling of the statue was utterly disgraceful, completely unacceptable, and sheer vandalism. All right? Avon and Somerset police have launched an investigation to identify those involved in the incident. There are tens of thousands of people there. You're going to put tens of thousands of people in prison? Is that what you're going to do? The vast majority of those who came to voice their concerns over the racial inequality and injustice did so peacefully and respectfully, said Superintendent Andy Bennett. Here's the thing, though. The silent majority stood, watched, and cheered. They cheered. However, there was a small group of people who clearly committed an act of criminal damage in pulling down the statue near Bristol Harborside. An investigation will be carried out to identify those involved, and we're already collating footage of the incident. Tens of thousands of people were involved. They were there clapping. Are you going to put all of those people in your prisons? More than 10,000 people have signed a petition calling for Bristol City Council to have it removed. Before they pulled it down, protester John McAllister, 71, removed the black bin bag hiding the statues. McAllister said it was erected by a citizen of Bristol as a memorial to one of the most virtuous and wise sons of this city. The man was a slave trader. He was a generous to Bristol, but it was off the backs of slavery, and it's absolutely despicable. It's an insult to the people of Bristol. Think of that. He's making the point that that statue was a show of shame. That wasn't a memorial. The fact that you had that slave trader up there moralizing that guy gets across your lack of concern and care for the Africans that he was fucking over and ruthlessly committing indescribably sadistic acts. Yes, he was profiting off of that. And that's utterly disgraceful. That was a show of shame. That wasn't a memorial. I love that because basically he's making this kind of moral judgment on that particular thing, saying this thing needs to go. I'm embarrassed that the thing is there. Now, this is kind of this moral judgment of a society that changes and say, yeah, this is no longer acceptable. We don't like this. This is, no different than we're going to use the term Negro, and it's like, yeah, we don't want that word anymore. Meaning there are times where your society have these kind of heaves of change. And this seems potentially to be one of them. Look, whatever you think of the Bristol thing, whether pulling that down was right, whether you think pulling it down was wrong, I don't think right or wrong exists in this context, if I'm being entirely honest with you. I mean, from a societal standpoint and from a legal standpoint, I suppose it was wrong. From a moral judgment standpoint, how can I argue with them saying, yeah, we don't accept a slave trader as a monument. This is problematic to us. Now, when I apply that same judgment on the statues in Richmond, I think I come to the same conclusion. There are things that are plaguing you as a society that go deeper than that statue. And that statue is somewhat of a token. Okay, so yeah, but it's like if Joe Biden comes out and says, you know what, I'm going to put out, something to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. We're going to de-escalate the police, and we're going to give them training with kittens. And they're going to play with those kittens, and they're going to be more sensitive when they go out and do their job. And people say, all right, that works. And they go home, and they're good. Like, is that going to really do it? Like, has your society tangibly changed now that you remove that statue? No, it hasn't. It looks different. You've removed the statue. And again, I give you kudos for that. I think that was pretty badass. But the issue here is not that statue. The thing that's bugging you, that's driving you, to getting you out there. Because I guarantee you this. You've removed that statue, and the very next day, you're still going to be out there protesting. It goes deeper than the statue. It goes deeper than the statues here in the United States. It goes deeper than that cop putting his knee on that guy's throat and ending his life. It goes to the point of the inequality that is in your system. That is the thing. If you really sit and think about it for a moment, and you think to yourself, why is there that much inequality in our system? And is that fair? Is the wealth equitable? Is the distribution of wealth in regards to the resources of your planet, is that fair? Do you honestly believe that giving 95% of the income gains to the top 1% in any capacity is fair? If you are sitting on a plateau looking at the world and you are unattached to any particular place and any particular person, and you ask yourself the very basic question of, with all of those resources, why is there so much poverty? Why is there a need for the United States to spend $1 trillion on the military? And why is that military in all of those countries? Is it possible that in the same way that Britain was, making cash off of their colonies, that the United States may do it in a different way, but is still doing it that way? And the way we benefit is basically off the backs of what we wrought around the world in regards to our military. Nobody asks those questions. I mean, the honesty of it is the Black Lives Matter protests that are taking place in the United States. I would imagine if you were in Palestine, you would say, what about me? Or if you were in Syria, you would say, what about me? You guys spent billions of dollars trying to foment a fucking civil war. They got 500,000 of us killed. Or Iraqis, what about me? Millions of us died for your oil companies to come into this country and fucking rape us blind. Iran, same thing. What about me? What about me? You guys fomented civil war because we wanted to use our own oil. And so you created a coup that basically took out a decent person and somewhat of a democratic government out and put in your strongman. Same thing in South America. The same thing that's happening. I guess my point is, you have a lot of people around the world who we've massively fucked over. And we fucked over basically for economic and geopolitical gain. These things somewhat dovetail. Knock a country out, you get access to their resources. You should read the stuff that was in the Wall Street Journal that was talking about Venezuela. Basically, if you can get Maduro out, there's all that oil that we can get our hands on. We got to get Maduro out. Obama comes out, Venezuela is a threat to our national security. Nobody ever asks why. And Venezuela, who the fuck are they threatening? Nobody. But the issue becomes, Obama was given $1 billion. You got to do something for that $1 billion. The public in this country does not care if you create a threat with Venezuela as long as they are doing particularly okay. And so Obama can do that. And nobody cares. And then Trump comes in and makes it worse. And people are like, wow, that's wow. Trump is, he's pretty going after Venezuela, missing the point that Obama started this shit. I guess my point is, it goes far deeper than just a cop kneeling on a guy's throat. And it goes into this notion of inequality that each and every country, because of the way this capitalistic system works, especially in these countries that have these right-wing governments, even in Europe, from a comparative base, Europe, you would think, will be more lefty. And they are. Meaning healthcare, education, those things are just known. Those things are understood as just being natural for human development, in which case we want to help things of human development. We want to keep chaos down, so we want to make sure that people are made whole as they develop. By the same token, in comparative terms, their governments have gotten shittier too, especially with this notion of the euro and everything else. They are dealing with those issues also. I guess it's a world thing. I mean, if you're going into areas of Africa, if you're going in, it doesn't matter where you are. You have this capitalistic system that is creating and driving a certain degree of inequality that people recognize as both grossly unfair. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're talking about Jeff Bezos being a trillionaire in 6 years. Think about that. Why doesn't that bother more people? I honestly, when Obama left office and I read that stat, 95% of the income to the top 1%, I thought, why aren't people on the streets? That is ungodly. And that guy was talking about hope and change. Trump is going to make it worse. Biden is not going to make it better. Because it goes deeper than these guys are willing to go. I'm going to end this. This has gone off the rails. They pull that statue down. I understand people may have feelings on both sides of whether or not that's good. It becomes a subjective thing, right? I mean, if somebody had a statue up of Hitler, would it be okay to pull that statue down? Some people will probably say yes. Some people will probably say no. I would say pull that fucking thing down. Now, if you have a statue of Andrew Jackson, who's basically an Indian, a Native American killer, is it okay to pull that statue down? Now, the catch becomes, it depends on who you are. If you are in the mindset that American history is sacred and that Andrew Jackson did all of these great things, then from your standpoint, the fact that he murdered all of those Native Americans matters less. If you're a Native American, that matters more. Who should gain sway? Meaning, what should matter more? If Hitler was nice to dogs and you gave him, a dog medal, should that matter more? Or if Hitler kept the trains running on time, that's nice, but should that matter more than the fact that he massacred all of these Jews and Russians? This is kind of the point, right? If a guy is going to be a slave trader, but you're telling me that he gave more money to Bristol, what matters more? The fact that he was a slave trader, or the fact that he gave money to Bristol? And you may say, well, look, that is a flagrant abuse of the mob, in a sense, in order to dispense justice. We're uncomfortable with the mob dispensing justice outside of some kind of governmental system. Fair enough. But, if you make this kind of argument of, that's wrong for these guys to do it, maybe, from a legal sense. But then you get into this notion of subjectivity of whether it's right in a moral sense. I have no issue with what they did. To me, that's not a position I need to defend. It is what it is, what it is. But Black Lives Matter. London, like, share,